Alan asks not to be distracted. He recalls the magic and swords of the magical world he loved in his past life. After which he realized that there was only a month left until the exam. But this did not meet his expectations. A view of a fortified town in the kingdom of Yulgria, Dragoon region, Duchy of Ruven. Alan sits on the grass by the river with a fishing rod, watching the fishing with a bridge and a house in the background. He noticed movement in the water and grabbed his fishing rod. Alan then pulls a large fish out of the water and rejoices. Reina admires Alan's magic, and he asks not to call him master, and she brings him a delivery. She then goes on to say that they are only 12 and she considers it disrespectful not to marry the Lord's son. Alan said that it was not disrespectful to swim in your underwear in front of him, which made Reina feel embarrassed. Meanwhile, Reina asks when this happened, and asks if he skipped classes again, to which he replies that he does not want to study all day and would have been better off born a peasant. She objected that one couldn't say that. And then he thinks about rights and equality, saying that he has no rights and is no different from other people. And he says that he is not that noble. Alan tells her not to think about it, but she says that such a title would be more interesting, right? At the same time, Alan asks Reina if she'll be happy if he enters the academy. Reina says that of course she will be happy, it will be a source of pride for the whole city, and that she will pass this on to her grandchildren and say that she was his nanny. So she will be happy, and Alan says he will try. He gives her the basket and says that he knows he has to try harder and asks for someone to teach him. He goes home and reflects on the ways to learn when he is reborn and comes to his senses. He talks about how to pass the academic entrance exam. You have to study day after day under the pressure of stress. He says that there is nothing more important in the world than education. As a result, he sits at the table in the room and says that he studied 18 hours a day, fulfilling his promise to his parents. But even then he couldn't get into the capital's university and went to a private one. After which he said that he studied at university and got a job in a large company. He recalls that they required communication and analytical skills. When he admits that he was bad, we hear how more was asked of him than he could do himself. He sits at a table in a room lined with bookshelves and tells how he came across a fantasy novel online and wanted to read stories about reincarnation. He then argues that learning is true talent, despite the reluctance to discuss it. He admitted that he was weak, but Shord asked sharply if he had called a break, which startled him. Following this, Shord warns that the exam will be a turning point in life and asks to be more serious, and he apologizes for the possible disappointment of the family. He thought for a moment and admitted that it could be more serious, to which the other man suggested continuing. Meanwhile, Alan explains that his answer is different from the usual, and the man with the mustache agrees to continue as long as everyone understands the situation. He remembers that 3 minutes ago he was spoiled and smug, and as the youngest member of the family, an absolute scoundrel. And then Alan realized that his attitude towards studying had changed after remembering his past life and merging with his past self. He asks what happens when a simpleton mixes with a nerd. At the same time, he explains that there are many noble families in the aristocratic hierarchy, and Alan listens attentively at the table. He believes that what distinguishes them is not what appears at first glance, and that there are also many naive people among ordinary families. Moreover, the country has a high level of education. There are kindergartens and high schools where adult children go. And to put it more bluntly, education and knowledge play a huge role here. There is nothing more important than that. Moreover, he admitted that he was not much different in education from ordinary people, despite his status as the third son of a viscount. He reflects on his reincarnation into a world of swords and magic, where society has become familiar. Eventually, reforms came to his mind. Shord turns to Alan saying that he is thinking again, and that Alan cannot fool him, and he asks him to be calmer. After which Alan said that he had listened and taken notes, and Shord asked him to point out any mistakes. Shord promises to lead the young gentleman to success, and he agrees to continue at the same pace. When the man explains the plan for absolute success, Alan finds it too complicated and notes that there are not enough tasks. The teacher praised the practical skills and suggested revising the schedule in favor of theory. He then warns the young gentleman about the potential problems that may arise from too much rest, but he replies that it is not his problem. He proposed increasing the duration of classes to 19 hours, eliminating sleep and breaks, and reducing lunch to 15 minutes. Following this, he decided not to miss important events and understand the essence of the exam, although he still considers the conditions not strict enough and needs to get used to them. He listens to Shorta's advice about conserving energy and agrees with him. Meanwhile, Alan declared that he would not allow himself to rest, because the undying desire of the Rowan family to gain knowledge rested on his shoulders, and the man was surprised by his words. He admitted that he never expected to hear such words from them, and then he noted the seriousness of his interlocutor's mood, and he confirmed with a smile that he now understood everything. Short thinks about the breaks between lectures, which will be shortened to 10 minutes, but also thinks that lunch is important and says that there is nothing more to regret, and Alan says that he does not need an hour for lunch. Even if he has a sandwich, 15 minutes will be too much for him, and Short says that such food is not acceptable for a noble person. At the same time, Alan resolutely stated that entering the academy is unacceptable, and he will continue to fight despite the difficulties in status, and says that Short is too caring, and if he can become a knight, he will spend the night in camps, the academy, and this is his main goal. Short stated that the enemies were strong, but there was only one way to defeat them. Moreover, he firmly declared that from today onwards his entire lunch would consist of combat rations, and he would not accept any objections. Short says he understands everything, although in the past he always interrupted every lesson, but it seems that this trait will no longer be a hindrance, and Alan says that he cares too much about it, and let him think better of himself. Which made Short shocked, and Alan asked if he had crossed the line. Alan and Short eat sandwiches without talking. Alan says that he doesn't have to sit with him and told him to ask the cook to make him a snack, to which Short refuses and says, "Aren't they on a battlefield? You can't sympathize with others," and Alan says that he does his homework and he can go to the toilet, but Short tells him that it's not necessary and he goes into a diaper, to which Alan was shocked. A few days later, early in the morning, Alan is out for a run. He didn't do any sports before his rebirth. Once he realized the importance of repeating simple commands, he began to develop his physical abilities by practicing with a sword in the mornings. He sweats, wipes his face, and thinks about the need to study hard to enter the academy, because the exam is already close. He then ponders the possibility and likelihood of passing the test while practicing sword training outside. He asks if he will have to continue studying to find a job, and the other one asks what will happen next, addressing him by the name Alan. Following this, Raina startled Alan, who almost dropped the sword from his hands. She is surprised by the changes in Alan due to his sword training, and he tries to understand how it happened. Meanwhile, he holds a sword and says he is simply doing what he has to do, reflecting on his death from illness at age 36. And on the last day he thought about clouds. And then she said that the wind was carrying them forward, and it would have been better if in his past life he had done what he wanted. He told Raina about his decision, and she reacted with surprise. At the same time, he declared that there were swords and magic in this world, and he would live as the wind dictated, doing what he wanted while Raina watched from behind. She shuddered and thought, asking herself if this would happen in this life. Moreover, Raina is surprised by his refusal to take the exam, and he firmly declares that he will definitely not give up. She says she wants to go to the academy to learn more about the world, but is willing to quit if necessary. He also stated that he would do his best to live happily and have no more regrets. Raina admires Alan's determination. Alan asks if she will be forced to go to the academy, to which Raina apologizes. She admits that she will be lonely if he enters the academy. Maybe he will become a different person. After which he reassures Raina, saying that he is not that pathetic and asks her not to worry. Raina is now relieved to realize that this is the real Alan in front of her, and says that he will definitely enter, and says that he will be famous not only in the Dragoon but throughout the country. So she tells him to study, work hard and not forget her, after which he grabs the sword. Afterwards he shows us the capital of Dragoon, Dragreed. The mayor's office of dragons says that there is nothing to expect from them. Only one child is at least a little interesting. And after that they show us her at the table. She talks about how many from their region will get into the A class and how this will affect the balance of power between the regions, and that the youngest son of the Zateswinger will definitely not lose to the daughter of the annoying Reverend. And says that even by the standards of the Dragoon family, your talent is remarkable, you will be admitted with a 99% probability, and don't dare get into any other class except A, to which he says of course. Afterwards they show us her. It turns out that she is the granddaughter of Maria Dragoon, and they also show us Elena, about whom we need to report. Meanwhile, she notices that his grades are low, he is ranked last and will probably fail the exam, although he may pass in magic. Alan ponders his hidden abilities while a girl in a headscarf sits under a tree. And then he waves, and she watches, sitting under a tree. Alan asked Reina how to use magic. She responded with surprise. Beautiful mountains and scorching sun. Alan meditates in a meadow, reflecting on memories and his decision to start his life over before his entrance exam in a month. Moreover, his character and way of thinking changed after his reincarnation. He reflects on the fusion of the experiences of a 36-year-old man and the consciousness of a 12-year-old boy in one life, and the fact that he can absorb everything much faster because he is in the body of a 12-year-old. He also admits that he used his brain for 2 months and worked hard, but something went wrong. He shouted the name of the move and prepared to attack, while an animal peered out warily from the bushes. As a result, Alan could only use magic to strengthen his body. But this was an ability that everyone in the world had. Components of body-enhancing magic: magical power, manipulation, fullness, and capacity. The fullness of magic can be improved through training, but its capacity is a talent from birth. He reports that his magic power is around 2,000 and can reach a maximum of 2,400. The same is said about the minimum passing grades and values required for admission to the academy. On the one hand, it is difficult to feel the magic itself, and he only knows in words that his feeling in this is high, and Alan's teacher in the past said that he has nothing more to teach him. He has elemental magic on his way, the ability to use fire, water, or lightning, which is what he expects from this world. But Alan tries to use fire magic and shouts fireball, but his spell doesn't work. He complained about life without magic and expressed his desire to have such an ability. Following this, Reina asked Alan about fireball and scared him. He told her not to scare him like that, and that he was the master's son and that she should address him as master, to which she answered that she didn't want to, and that she was only here for a short time, so there was no need. Meanwhile, Shord notes that the exam cannot be passed by chance, and is glad that the young gentleman carefully prepared for it. He was surprised by the increase in training time and decided to follow a strategy to understand his strength. And then Alan, with a bandage on his forehead, speaks decisively about getting closer to the goal, while the other sits in a chair and remembers the words of the young master. Shord says that Alan spent several days going over the issues and preparing that very strategy, and that he took his job and he realized that he failed as a tutor, but he does not consider it something terrible. And if he has a question in the middle of a lesson, he won't calm down until he gets an answer, and instead of a simple lesson it becomes a full-fledged discussion. And the fact is that in 2 months he became a completely different person. He worked more than he ever worked before. Shord claims that the young gentleman in such a state can enter the academy. Moreover, Alan's father is surprised to learn that he only studied for the last 2 months, while they were in the capital on business. Grim Rowan is Alan's older brother. He asks Shord if he is sure about this and maybe Alan was confused with someone else, and father agrees and then speaks clearly, and says that Shord is probably getting old, which is not surprising. These words made Shord angry, which frightened both of them, and he says that Alan worked for these 2 months without rest and without sufficient food. Shord reported that the young gentleman had expressed his wishes and his diligence would influence the exam. As a result, Alan works hard in the new world, without stopping for rest and food. He told his father the news was good and offered to talk to Alan over lunch, who agreed not to press him, as the teacher had said. Alan then entered the room, apologized for being late, and explained that he had been discussing the history of magic with Shord, much to the surprise of those seated at the table. To which the father, surprised, says that he understands everything and that he was busy, and Alan thanks them for their patience. When he asked if his mother was still in the capital, and noted with a smile that she was always like that, the man confirmed that she was looking after Rose. Alan is being formal, to which his father and brother tell him to communicate as usual, and his mother is not here. Then he seems to mock them and tells them to come back. Alan doubted his naturalness, but realized it didn't matter, and he felt bad. Afterwards, his father asks Alan how he is preparing for the exam, to which he understands that now it is clear. It is strange that they did not ask about this before. He is confident that he can handle it and promises to be careful. Meanwhile, the father asks about what Shord said about him with confidence, to which Alan answers with agreement. He says that he is grateful to Shord for his work, because he is already old, but he tries so hard to help. Father and Grim were surprised by his words about Shorda. He claims that Alan has finally come to his senses, while the other confirms that he is now on his own. At the same time, one claims that Alan is worth believing in, while the other complains that the Viscount did not give him peace, and his son boasted of his intelligence during the meeting. Alan believes that his father could have been normal if he had not been an alcoholic. Afterwards, we are shown his training again. He is trying to strengthen his body, and Reina is watching him. He explains that 2 necessary techniques are needed to use such magic, and she reacts with surprise. Furthermore, he claims that manipulation of magic is his specialization, and begins to use body magic circulation. He explains that others are able to create fire and ice from magic, calling it nature reform. In the end, he breathes heavily and admits that he lacks talent. He contemplates his talent and ability to use magic while she watches him from the tree. After which he began to think about whether he could. She said that she would find a tutor on this topic if she entered the academy. As he lies on the grass, he declares with determination that he will definitely pass the exam. She says she can't imagine what Alan will achieve in the outside world, and he is preparing to leave for the capital. Alan takes Reina's gift, a basket of food, and shakes the Shord's hand. They look at each other and pride is visible in Shorda's eyes. Alan leaves and they say goodbye to him, and it is said that there are 2 weeks left before the exam. Alan Rowan bows to Dio and asks him to be his escort, expressing a desire to travel together. Meanwhile, several people are standing near a carriage with horses, discussing that there are 2 weeks left until the exam. The map shows the route from Rovani to the capital of Runarelia via Dragreed with a transfer. And then he explains that the reason he needed an escort in Madame Cecilia to allow the lady to stay in the capital. He thinks that he called him, so who else should accompany him? He defends it by killing the Dirank spiders, to which he receives praise from Alan. He also asked permission to compete with them in spear fighting. But Dio says he's on a mission, and Alan asks for a break and begs him to fight with spears. But in the end he agrees but says that only once. He says that the unprepared cannot stand against him, and the range of a spear is different from that of a sword. Dio says he will defeat him without mercy. With a wound on his face, he continues to get back on his feet, not giving up. He then attacks Dio, who notices his tactics and prepares to respond, and throws him to the ground. After this, it is confirmed that he is studying something important before the exam, and has been practicing with a sword in the morning. He ran every day. The last time he saw him, he had read a book before, and Dio wondered where the rumors about his shamelessness came from, because he is a very good person. He then continued to do the same until Dragreed. Alan admits that he couldn't defeat him, but Dio is still impressed by his skills. Following this, he is confident that Alan will definitely become a strongman. He promised to repay and said goodbye to Dio, who tried to stop him, but then thought better of it and said no. After Alan leaves and says goodbye to Dio, he says that he should also study. Night cityscape of Wisconsin Dragoon with lanterns and signs in the town of Dragoon. And then a crowd of people stands on the platform in front of the arriving magical train in the tunnel. Alan opened the door and walked into an empty room with a sofa and a lamp. He is happy because the exam is coming soon. He studies during the day, sleeps at night, and returns to his studies by the window. He decides to look out the door and sees people. Alan ate and then sat down to do his homework again and didn't notice when night fell again. He also trains on the train all this time. He trains hard to hone his skills before the exam. Eventually, he notices that it is already morning, looking at the rising sun. He reflects on the need to sleep so that he can be ready by 10 in the morning. Afterwards, he hears from someone that he is interesting. Maria's granddaughter stands and looks at him. Alan says he felt someone's presence at night. He called her a weirdo and admitted that he didn't think she had been following him for 6 hours. Alan said he would simply ignore her. She Ferun von Dragoon, heir to the Dragoon dynasty, suggested Alan call her simply Faye. Following this, Alan apologizes to the daughter of the Dragoon family, and also says that of all the possible people, he did not expect that she would be from the Dragoon family, and thinks that she is studying him. He awkwardly offered to introduce himself, thinking that she had long been fed up with such guys, and she responded with a grin. Meanwhile, she notes that he is interesting. She thought that he was the brother of the great Rosalind Roven, and when she saw him before, he was always busy, and she became interested in him. They both want to pass the exam, so it would be better for them to get to know each other. She asks him if he hoped to understand magic, and says that it is right before the exam, and how much he practices for his future. He was surprised that everyone at the academy was the same monsters as her, and he couldn't believe that she noticed it. At the same time, he admitted that his magic was barely noticeable and tried to conserve as much mana as possible. Agreeing with this, she guessed that his level was around 2480, which surprised Alan because how could she know? Faye showed him the camera through which she saw his level. She created it and hoped to become an engineer, and Alan asks if she knows his sister. Faye says that of course she knows his sister, because she is a zealous rose, but Alan does not understand what his sister has done to be called that. Dragunka says that as a future engineer she really hoped to meet his sister, and wants Alan to introduce her to his sister, and Alan says that of course he will introduce her and will be glad, and he says that he needs to go to the toilet because he is incontinent. She says that since they are now friends, there is no need for formalities, and wishes luck to Alan, who agrees. Alan is on his knees, to which she tells him that he doesn't need to bow down because he is also from a noble family, and only sinners do that. He remembers his father apologizing to his mother and then reflects on sinners. The fairy enters the train and sees her maid. She apologizes for upsetting her. And Sarah says that if he finds out about Faye, he will probably regret it. Faye told her that Alan had left and before that he had said that he was going to write, to which the maid was embarrassed. Sarah says that he even got the right to talk to the lady, and Faye says that she has a feeling that she should get Alan. And Sarah is embarrassed. She discovered Alan's grades and noticed a low chance of passing the test due to poor results. Following this, the fairy said that they would meet again soon. Alan talks about his family. His older brother, Grim, graduated from a noble school, and his second brother, Beck, completed knightly training and is now serving in the army. And also talks about his sister who passed everything with absolute honors. She is 4 years older than him, but unfortunately that year the required mana level was higher, so she was not able to pass. Now she is studying at the Capital's Institute for the study of magical devices. And she just adored him when he was home. Such a daughter she was. Because she sent Alan too many letters, her parents limited her to 3 pages a month. The central station of the city of Runarelli against the background of the sky with clouds. Alan gets off the train and hears someone calling him. It turned out to be his sister Rosalia, which Alan is surprised at, and he thought that she would not dress so beautifully, and that she attracts so much attention. Alan says that she looks great, to which she thanks him and says that he has changed too. Behind Rosalia stood their mother, who asked if she was happy and that it took her so long to get ready, and Alan greeted his mother. Alan's mother's name is Cecilia. She says that he has changed so much that she barely recognized him. Alan also noticed that his mother also attracts a lot of attention. Cecilia asks Alan if he was traveling alone, with all this pile of luggage on his tiny body, and looks at him with a terrible look, radiating an elder aura. Alan remembered how his father insisted that Shord go with him, but he himself refused so that he could have more fun alone. He says that of course his degrada was accompanied by an escort, but he also wants to learn independence, although his father was categorically against it. Rosalia hugs Alan, saying that he has grown so much, and his mother exhales and asks Alan, was Daddy categorically against it, and heard confirmation. He says that yes, of course Dad was against it, although he didn't care. And his mother says that she will talk to his father at the first opportunity, and Alan apologizes to his father and says that he tried. And his father sneezes because they talk about him, and Shord was finally able to rest. Then a view of the town with a castle on a hill and a church in the foreground, surrounded by trees and houses. The building of the Yulgria Knight and Magic Academy, also known as the State Academy. Following this, Alan stands in front of the closed gates and reflects on his plan to become a knight, despite the stiff competition and high demands. He stands in front of the gate and reflects on the approaching exam, noting that he cannot see beyond the bars. Meanwhile, he runs down the street, wondering whether to cross the gate, and is surprised that he has already run 40 kilometers in an hour and a half. Alan recalls running every day at home and wonders if the city is really that big. And then he agreed to come back tomorrow, and the other one admitted that it was an excellent replacement for training. He was looking around the future place of study and was surprised to hear a voice behind him. At the same time, he runs quickly along the empty cobbled street between buildings and lampposts. The surveillance camera is hidden behind the leaves near the fence. Moreover, Shord is surprised to see Alan eating pocket rations in the capital's villa of the Viscounts of Roven. He listens attentively to the explanations about preparing for the exam. Additionally, Raina wished Alan a good morning, and he and Shord discussed the importance of maintaining a strong body and the need to try harder. She says that they will live together, and she notices praise from her mother. In the end, he hopes to move into a dorm upon admission, and she listens silently. She asked, "Huh?" with a slight smile, after which he assured his sister that his father approved of his decision, and she asked incredulously if he was joking. She hit him in the face. When Raina remarks that Alan has become better at defending himself, he replies that she doesn't need her fists if she practices magic. He sharply repels the attack of the girl with long hair, amazed by his determination. Raina then hit the man, thanked him for taking the blow and offered to discuss it, noting that his face was soft, so there would be no problem. She demands breakfast. He orders them to stop messing around while the third one puts plates on the table. Following this, he says that even if he moves, she will be able to see him and asks her to be grateful. He stated that the head of the family gave an answer, and she reacted with embarrassment. Meanwhile, Raina is yelling at Alan, who sits at the table with his face covered while she tries to say something. Alan hides an object behind his back. Shord asks what's going on. And then the open gates against the backdrop of rain and a distant castle, with no visible characters. He asks if anyone will be running this morning, despite it being an exam day and the rain. At the same time, Shord explained that he wanted to do it as usual, and she wished him luck and said that she now understood why he was allowed to go alone. He warned that it was dangerous to use magic in rainy weather, and that he needed to assess the condition of the ground due to slippery roads. He also demands that important tasks be repeated faster, stronger, and that magic be used safely, admitting that he enjoys it. He stands with a towel, and Raina laughs, braiding her hair. She also explains that the reason for her good mood is a gift, and he says that he asked his sister to show him the city before the exam. He admitted that he felt a little ashamed of the request and explained that he had given her a scarf. Raina ends up crying, covering her face with her hands, and Alan tries to calm her down among the passers-by on the street. He thinks she chose a scarf that matches the color of his hair, but she smiles and tells him she let her choose any color she wanted. After which he served the food and wished them a pleasant appetite, while the other looked at the dish in surprise. She smiles, he exhales, and he looks forward. When she wished Alan luck, he returned the favor at the door. He thanks and assures of his readiness to carry out the task. Then he notices that the rain has stopped. A crowd of people had gathered at the gates of the State Academy. There were 10 minutes left before reception closed at 9:50 a.m. Following this, the employee announced the capacity of the mana and asked to go to the audience. He noticed a crowd of people and was surprised by the silence around. Meanwhile, he anxiously awaits the results of the mana study and admits that it is unpleasant. The crowd is discussing that after 10 a.m., those who have not received their results and who have not seen their name on the lists will not get into the exam, and 7,000 out of 10,000 people will drop out. And then Alan stared at the square with people and a tent, heading towards it. He notices that the ground is soft and uncomfortable to walk on and expresses surprise. At the same time, He claims that one can choose any direction and proceed to the exam if one has good results in practical battles. He said that there is also a practical exam showing a row of swords in a stand. In addition, a group of people are discussing that the examiners will select about 2,000 people, and only 1,000 will go through. He noted that the situation remains unchanged. Additionally, 3 men discuss the teacher's strictness and their inability to move forward. One of them complains that he can't seem to get anything done. He rudely advises his interlocutors to go home, calling the situation a nightmare. In the end, he agreed, thinking that they shouldn't have come, although they deserved it. Alan receives a call from a man with sideburns, who demands that he come over, while another man selects someone from the crowd. After which Shord turned to her, and she reminded him that she had been told she could go wherever she wanted. He said, "Okay." When he heard, "Hey," when he asked again were they really going to ignore him, he screams for them to stop, but the group continues to move forward, ignoring him. Alan then asks if he passed the test, and the man recognizes him as the one who ran around the academy for 3 days. The man says that the academy's security guards keep a close eye on strange children and would immediately know if anyone was walking around here. Following this, one of them explains that experts have already analyzed the video, while the other indignantly denies any involvement in it. He said that he had passed the practical exam, and he replied that he had also studied the material and doubted that it was sufficient to assess the level of preparation. Meanwhile, he claims that the other one controls the forces to run in the rain and run 40 kilometers in an hour and a half, demonstrating all his abilities. Alan is surprised. The man says he passed the test and asks to be hit for credit. And then he asked, confirming that the elimination duel would only be the next stage. He claims that there is no one nearby and advises not to worry. At the same time, he delivers a powerful blow, and the other parries the attack with a smirk, showing confidence in the fight. He parries the blow with a stick, but receives a strong blow from his opponent, while 2 others, weapons in hand, watch in shock. Alan also rushed forward, shouting "Wow!" to stop the 2 men with clubs. He fights the man and reminds him that he told him not to worry, and the man responds by calling him ignorant. He also asked if his opponent had anticipated his attack from the first move, and he replied that he had attacked before he had finished speaking. Alan began to speak, trying to explain himself, remembering the scene with the blow. In the end, he announced that the internship was over and suggested that he go to the academy to take the theory test, asking his name. Alan introduced himself and thanked them, bowing to the 2 men. He then asked Alan how the practice had gone as they walked down the street alongside other passers-by. He explained that this was a duel for skill evaluation. The other one thanked him, and the third confirmed his understanding. When 3 people stand on the street, one of them answers briefly, and the other 2 look in his direction in surprise. He warns about problems at the reception. Then 3 silhouettes against the backdrop of a building among the trees. One of them has tousled gray hair. He sits on the bench and thinks that the theory also went with ease. Following this, he writes a test in the classroom where everyone takes typical exams, and considers that everything is over almost immediately. He stands thoughtfully, then walks down the steps onto a busy street. Meanwhile, he is fighting with a man who is lying on the floor, while another one watches the scene with a determined expression. Alan decided to study hard. Then his work was praised and he was given a celebration. And then the cries of returning home are heard, and the results of the exam for the next day are announced on the board. They stared forward, one of them trying to make sense of what was happening. Meanwhile, plates of food and cutlery are lying on the table. Alan has completed his exams and is now awaiting the results. Alan is surprised when she says the results will be announced tomorrow and asks if he can watch them. Besides, he said that he wanted to see the exam results with her, and she quietly said, "Mother." He is confident of his success, and she asked to show the results, calling him a good son. Moreover, Alan decides to agree because her sister's mother rejected her wish because of her studies. People wait for the results the next day at 10:30 at the notice board. As a result, Alan looks up tensely, as do those around him. He reflects on the past and failures, while speaking confidently about his efforts and aspirations. After Alan exclaimed, she pointed to the place, explaining where it was. The characters discussed the academy exam grades in the hall. When a man asks Emmy to show him the moment he steps on the ground, she immediately complies with his request. He moves forward quickly, and Emmy, the magic instructor, nods from her chair. Then the old man in the hat and beard asks the other one if he has interested anyone, but he remains silent. The examiner with the mustache addressed him by the name Dante. Following this, the man explains that the prepared ground limits strength and movement, and also allows the alien's actions and magic to be tracked. Justin Rock noted that it was good that the interlocutor had thought of this earlier. Meanwhile, he explained that he had tested their potential, but considered the approach too simplistic for assessing abilities. A man with a mustache discusses observations around the school with two others. And then Vice Principal Muka Yugia demands to focus on work and announce the results of the exam, and Du Ovazil explains that he decided to test his abilities. Examiner Park accuses someone of theft. The girl with the crown indignantly tells the old man that he's as helpful as ever. At the same time, the man with the beard asked to tell what he thought about the man who almost approached him. He marks the other's reaction with his sword, and the man says that the situation can be resolved by appearance. He also explains that a score of 10 is the highest score for the exam, and if accepted, he will become the best. Alan said he gave someone permission to do whatever they wanted while they were attacking, and Reina listened intently. In addition, the enemy quickly counterattacked, released his weapon and kicked him with a kickflow, and the others are discussing the enemy's magic level. Two men discuss the commander of the third block of court knights named Lightning and his outstanding fighting abilities. He finally realized why Henry had released his sword to strike at his blind spot. The bearded man took into account the number of people around him and prepared for the next attack, surprising his interlocutor. After which she explains that the sharp attack at the beginning is no less striking, and understands why not everyone sees him as a knight, but those who admire it also understand it. The old man believes there is no future for unconventional thinkers, and the man thinks the enemy did not consider him a threat. When a man with a beard admits that he likes someone, he is going to take that person. She refused, and the others discussed class assignments and the conditions of the theoretical exam. Alan then claims that many people don't know how to learn. The old man says that only geniuses learn from them, and they argue until Reina calls for them to stop discussing others. He asked if they saw what happened in the video afterward, and the old man replied that he hadn't, and the others discussed how the man was too scary to approach. Alan then reveals that he was in a good mood, but because of his smile, no one came up while Reina was busy at the door. Shord condemns the laughter of the year, while she wonders why no one has approached him, and the others laugh and argue nearby. Meanwhile, the group listens to a story about a bearded examiner who is cruel and in a bad mood, and notes that the rumor quickly spread among the children. The old man coughed. Two men watched from behind. Then a group of people mock the bearded man. One calls him bearded, and another laughs loudly. The head of the knighthood speaks of his readiness to watch over bristles, despite his fatigue. At the same time, Alan bowed politely and introduced himself. The man insists that Lightning will pass. The group reacts with laughter and surprise. In addition, Alan announced that he had passed and showed the amount of mana for. He looks at the exam results while the other man remains silent. He also admits to being both pleased and shocked by what he heard, while he tries to comprehend what is happening. Alan is pleased with the results of his work, and the woman with a bun on the back of her head looks at him in surprise. As a result, he doubts the correctness of the grade for the theory and practical exam of entry Class A. He asked what this class meant, and Shord listened to him attentively. The woman then congratulated Alan on entering Class A and said she was proud of him, noting that he had achieved all this on his own. Shord looks at Alan, who is surprised and looks away, when he claims to believe in Alan despite the tense atmosphere around him. He said he would go home and report on Bella and Shorta's progress. The woman then reminds the young man of the 11 o'clock program, and he sheepishly agrees. Alan thanks her for breakfast, and she listens to him with surprise. After this, Shord reflects on her failure with homework, but she cooks for him, and he thinks it is worth thanking her. He waves his hand and leaves, and the woman says goodbye to him in the distance. Meanwhile, Alan prepares to enter Class 1A, remembering that he devoted his entire past life to studying. He stated that he wanted to live his student life at a state academy. And then he says with determination that his fun is play with friends, do club activities and date a girl, regardless of the outcome. She said she was expecting Alan, but didn't think they would be able to meet. At the same time, he retreated when she appeared in front of him, and then slammed the door, trying to escape. Alan is surprised by the appearance of Fairy, asking him to stop, while Shord watches with doubt. Muldor Engraver also introduced himself to Alan Rowan and told him about his family. Afterward, they shook hands. He introduced Kokoniala Kanarea to a friend, who replied that it was nice to meet him. He also calls Coco's book amazing, and Coco agrees to be friends and allows him to call him Coco. Reyna laughs, and Shord asks why he memorized information from the encyclopedia that wasn't mentioned on the exam. The other man asks what the difference is. Eventually, Alan learned that Zatzinger was a member of one of the 3 ducal families, and the other explained that it was Leo Satzinger, whom he thought he knew. Leo expressed hope for mutual understanding, after which Alan kindly offered to reciprocate, and the other man irritably ordered him to shut up and warned him not to fall on his knees. He looks at another who extends his hand. When Mir Velik explains that to break absolute records you need to be prepared for difficulties and befriend difficult people, the newcomer is amazed by what he hears. Alan thinks he's different. Shord demands to be introduced to his girlfriend, while those around him notice he lives in his own world. She then asks Alan to introduce her as more than a friend but less than a lover, and he replies that he doesn't know her and shouldn't deceive her about their relationship. He is confused, and she accuses him of cruelty, remembering that he held her in his arms all night. Following this, Alan reproaches the other for lying and wanting to be close, and he justifies himself and asks him not to talk nonsense. He asked Alan why he had entered the academy and called him by name. Meanwhile, he looks forward, and she remains silent. He says he wants more freedom of action, and the other one indignantly replies that he has been misunderstood. And then he asked Alan if he wanted to become strong and protect the country and its people, causing him to be surprised. He said that he doesn't set big goals for himself, but simply strives for fun and an interesting life, which is why he went to study at the academy. At the same time, he asks whether protecting the country's citizens should not be the goal, and clarifies that he intends to act only for himself. He stated that he could not, since he was the 3rd son of a famous family. Besides, he stands in the center, and those around him look at him attentively. He defends only what he wants and strives for freedom, while the other notes the difference in their ideals. Moreover, Alan stated that his wish would not change even under the threat of death. He admitted that their ideals did not coincide, after which the old man laughed loudly, causing surprise among those present. Eventually, Alan and the other student are surprised by the appearance of an old man, who introduces himself as Goderfan von Vankish and congratulates them on their admission to Class A. He listens to the 2 talk about the war hero and his role at the academy, expressing surprise and admiration. After which the 2 men say that he was weak at first, entered the E-class, but through hard work he won the title of Knight and Magician. Alan asked if he could ask a question, and the old man suggested they continue their acquaintance, as he stands surrounded by an energy vortex, causing amazement among those watching. Alan bows 3 times and asks to be allowed to become Master Goderfan's student. Then he told what had happened, and the others listened with alarm and surprise. Alan is happy to hire a home-based mage tutor and instantly summons a fireball. Following this, the young man listens in bewilderment to the old man in the hat, who says that he does not like to beat around the bush. The man says Alan's name is on the list, but his enlistment is still in question. Meanwhile, Alan heard from the old man that he was suspected of cheating on the exam. The old man accuses Alan of cheating on the exam. He demands that he either prove his knowledge or admit he's a fraud and leave. And then the bearded examiner reported that he had passed, but the high score for the practical seemed suspicious to him. He doubts, remembering his participation in the exam, trying to figure it out. At the same time, he accuses the Academy of irresponsibility and is outraged that he is being suspected, and she believes that he is trying to shift the blame onto her. He stated with persistence. Moreover, Alan enters the room with determination, clenching his fists. He and the other man looked at each other tensely, and the old man with the beard ordered Leo to back off. He also approaches the old man in the hat and asks about the price, after which the old man answers thoughtfully. Alan claimed he had not cheated and was prepared to crush anyone who stood in his way in front of others in the audience. He is ultimately shocked when the old man reveals that he is suspected of cheating on the theory exam. Alan stands in front of an old man in a hat who is looking at him intently, after which he watches a group of young people who are examining the room and the window, and she stands nearby watching them in silence. Alan asks for an explanation, and another character teases him, asking if he's going to crush something. When he was informed of the suspicions due to the difference between his past work and yesterday's exam, he was also told that his height was hardly normal. He said that after analyzing the actions, no evidence was found, and the result remained unchanged even after the change of judges. Alan then explains that he fell in love with studying after being reborn, and the old man wonders how he succeeded so much and asks him to convince him. He thought about the possibility. Following this, he reflects on the need to be sincere. He studied for 3 months to save his life, and the old man considers the answer cliché and unacceptable. Meanwhile, Alan admitted that he had a good teacher, and the old man reacted with surprise. Stjord tells how his teacher Vainfurs changed him by forcing him to study, eat almost nothing, and sleep 3 hours a day for 3 months. And then Alan said the new product was terrible, and the old man asked his opinion about the salami-flavored crackers. He admitted that he put it into production. At the same time, he looks at the tall old man in the hat, and someone quietly calls him Stjord. He claims that he passed on his toughness to him and always emphasized that they were fighting on a battlefield. Moreover, the teacher supported him and his sister, showing care and giving all his time. He demanded that she be silent, and she asked if the zealous Rose had the same story. Besides, he didn't expect Alan to, brother of the victim of the red carpet incident. He tells the old man about the red carpet incident, when the marquises treated the lady. In the end, not a single marquis was seen at the academy, and the young lady sent all the victims to the hospital. She refused to take the exam, and he told her he had heard about it, although she was considered a victim and did not explain herself. After which, Alan is surprised that his sister did something to avoid discussing it with her mother, and reflects on the difficulty of the exam and the low passing score. He asks what's so special about it, she laughs and calls it interesting, and the third one explains that the victim is a drunken Rose and he is her brother. When Stjord taught her how to navigate the battlefield, the old man says he now understands the situation better. Alan sighed. The old man promised to discuss the matter later. The man then warns that he will be transferred to Class E if he did not cheat. He asked again about Class E. He then explains that in the past, people have proven themselves to be honest, but were relegated to the E class because they couldn't do more. He thinks this will help him enjoy his student life more. Meanwhile, he, with long hair and a beard and a hat, noted with surprise that no one even argued. After a one-on-one conversation, Peter decided that Ivan had not cheated, but was still hiding something. And then he covers his mouth with his hand and says, He says he doesn't usually end conversations so easily, but now all the conditions are in place, and this applies to everyone present. At the same time, the old man warns that the country will soon enter into war with the Empire, and the 3 people listening to him react tensely to his words. Alan tells the group about choosing the best fighters to support the country, and the man with the beard adds that not everyone is obliged to become a soldier, it all depends on the desire to live. Besides, the old man in the hat claims that war is a common cause, and after graduating from the academy, one can take leading positions in the army and fulfill one's duty. He discusses the possible consequences of cheating on talented people in the country and asks for his interlocutor's opinion. In addition, to remain in Class A, you need to get the approval of each classmate within a week. He says that he will personally report the information to His Majesty and receive permission, and Alan is watching this. In the end, he says he's having fun, looking ahead in the shadow of a large hat. He considers turning the tables and decides to take a closer look. After which he stands doubtfully, arms crossed, surprise giving way to uncertainty. He asked if there was any point in staying in this class, and the other one started saying, "By the way." When one said that there was nothing wrong, the other replied that there was some benefit to be gained by talking about his school years in Class A, but he did not want to do that. Shord warns him that he can stay in E-class, but he refuses and states that he is not ready. Then he demands to know what will happen next. He refuses approval. The other is not going to do this while being among people. Alan then reflects on the cheating suspicions and questions whether they need a classmate who lives for himself while someone criticizes Faye. He said that he would transfer to another class, although he did not really want to do it, but he would pretend that he was trying. Meanwhile, she asks for permission, and the old man in the hat apologizes. Alan asks what he needs to do to be recommended. The old man replies that he can ask a question and asks what exactly. And then the old man demands a report, and she confirms that everything is simple and clear. She claims that she considers Alan worthy of first year A, and the old man confirms this with his decision. Meanwhile, Reina declares her desire to vote for Dragoon, and Rary is outraged by her decision and doubts his right to vote on behalf of the family. Alan demands to shut up. The other one reacts tensely. Moreover, he threatens to rip the mask off his interlocutor's face and show it to Mrs. Faye, and he reacts with surprise. He quickly went home after meeting. In addition, he plans to enter the E class and avoids socializing. He asks to register the room, and a woman with a cane, introducing herself as Commandant Sewell, asks to write down the name in class. As a result, the teacher accuses Alan of cheating, despite his high score. He asked how the other one copied it and thought about it, after which he replies that there is no way, and the man with glasses explains the rules of the dorm and asks to take a look. He reads the inscription about living with honor and striving for knowledge. When he heard about the large bathroom, the man explained the living conditions and food in the hostel. He informs her that students in Class D and above can rent the best rooms, and she sees his happy face despite this. He then explains that this place is for those who cannot pay more, and the other asks to take care of him for the next 3 years. He laughs, and the woman behind the counter hopes that in a week he will remain just as happy. Following this, the two discuss that even with everyone's consent and evidence, the guy will still be transferred to Class E. He claims that such teachers do not exist and is confident that he himself gathered his strength and learned. Meanwhile, she reported that she had already gathered people to find out who Stjord Vinforce was, and noted that everyone except the gentleman agreed. Justin and Dante discuss whether to allow someone to stay in class despite doubts about his behavior during the introduction. And then one of the men admitted that he had been distracted by trifles, to which the second called him worthless. He believes that candidates for the academy must be able to overcome difficulties, and questions the wisdom of accepting those who cannot complete the task. At the same time, he noted that this is an ideal test and praised the thoughtfulness of the ability check. The man in the hat says that more than one person received the best score. Another asks who exactly. Alan also listened carefully to the surrounding sounds. In the hall, a group of people watch Shord, who presses his palms together with a smile. Besides, he woke up at 5 in the morning. He finds the room too simple for himself, but is quite satisfied. He eventually reported the availability of a free washing machine and a company that tests detergents. He runs around the academy clockwise after exiting the south gate, after which he runs along a path among the hills and says that he found this place on the first day with beautiful forks and a common path of 500 meters. He trains with the sword for half an hour, practicing his blows on the street near his house. As he started the new day, he went through the routine without a problem, doing his stretches and breathing a sigh of relief. In the dormitory cafeteria, a woman scolds a man who is late on his first day, and he makes the excuse that there is still an hour before closing. Then on the table are 2 large burgers and a glass of drink, accompanied by the sounds of eating. He looks at the hamburger. Following this, he was surprised by the amount of oil in the pork, which had been lying in it for a long time. He regrets throwing away food and wonders why no one else came to the empty cafeteria. Meanwhile, Shord notices that he specializes in physical strength and praises him for it. He says burgers are for mages today, they boost their mana. If you eat them today and tomorrow, you'll have a menu for physical strength. And then Alan asked if it was possible, and the other man confidently explained that with the right combination of ingredients and magic, it was not difficult. He doubted her words, but she explained that she was conducting experiments with the help of students, whom she considered mice. At the same time, he is surprised by the taste of the burger, and she says that she doesn't care. He doubts the vitamins in the food, and she thinks that her brother cares about her. Moreover, the man with the eye patch addresses him, and he indifferently responds that he doesn't care. He stated that he wanted to learn magic, despite his lack of predisposition. He also asked about the necessary ingredients and vitamins. He said that the problem is known and is being actively addressed, but there is no solution yet. He ended up taking first place in the practical exam, and the man noted his talent in the physical field. He asked why magic was needed, and another explained that the formation of the body is the direct path to knighthood and magicians are lost without choosing a sphere of development. After which he stated that he wanted to learn from her, ignoring the opinions of others, and the man with glasses expressed doubt about the study of monsters. He argues that desire can justify itself, but failure is also possible, and the other only smirks in response. When he accepted help from an elderly man who offered to support him in a difficult situation. He suggests starting tomorrow. Then Shord advises him to finish eating quickly and get ready, and he thinks that this way he will adapt to the battle faster. He's confident he can break the routine on the first day, sandwich in hand. Following this, he puts on a shirt and tie, remembering that he received his uniform in the room yesterday. He straightened his tie and said that everything was fine. Meanwhile, he announced that his school life had begun. He quickly headed towards the building, claiming that he was going to his first lesson in Class E. And then Alan says that in order to stay in Class A, all his classmates must give him recommendations on the conditions Godorphan named. He thinks about the deadline in a week and considers this period a waste of time, not wanting to complete the task right away. At the same time, he observes the classroom, where several students are talking and sitting at desks in a bright room with large windows. Alan warns that he's walking a tightrope from the start, while another man smirks and calls him a problem child and advises him to brace himself. He also approached Alan and expressed his desire, much to his surprise. Shord apologizes for the problems with his sister, and Alan assures that forgiveness has already been received and suggests communicating as usual. Also, he remains silent and then smiles, saying that he understood. Reina asked Alan to change rooms. He asked why he'd gone to the main dorm. The old man told him about the amplification magic training in the arena. In the end, the old man in the hat informed the audience that the Royal Academy trains generalists, not magicians without combat skills. He reflects on the fact that knights also train and listen to lectures on magic, and this becomes increasingly interesting to him. After which the architecture of a round building with arches and towers is visible against the backdrop of a sky with clouds. The teacher in the hat divided the students into pairs for a mock battle. The rest will watch. When he remembers that in his past life he was always alone and got hurt, he hears a command to form pairs. He says he didn't expect to get the opportunity so soon to teach a lesson to his interlocutor, who is thinking about his hatred towards him. He then declares battle and promises not to make a recommendation even if he receives an order from Faisama. Alan reminded him not to go back on his word until another man called out to the old man. Following this, the man approved Alan's decision to trust the outcome of the training battle on behalf of Periabnine. He decides that this is a great opportunity, because then you won't have to wait a whole week to fulfill the conditions. Meanwhile, she calms Alan down and promises that Perry will give him a recommendation, and he asks her not to say scary things. Alan studies his opponent's strength, and Reina is confident that repeating the technique several times will help her win. And then he looks forward carefully and says that he sees an arena with columns and arches, holding a sword. He remembered that the head of the Abnil family was a spearmaster and that the family had ties to the military and the dragoon family. At the same time, he understands that it is necessary to be able to defend himself, even if he has never had to fight before, and he believes in his competence. He admits defeat to the C-rank researcher and explains that he doesn't have enough experience to win. Moreover, he asks to be treated well, and the girl with the headscarf thinks about training with a spear and tests her skills. Alan prepares to attack with his staff, anticipating the enemy's attack. In addition, he is preparing for battle with his staff, and a group of observers is closely watching what is happening. He orders to retreat half a step, watching the enemy with a staff. Alan eventually fends off the attack while Shord and Reina watch. He noticed that the enemy was almost hit, after which he explains that this is a spear lunge technique. He swears that he missed, and Alan explains that it's all simple, parrying the attacks with 2 sticks. When he evaluates his opponent's spearmanship, he notices his talent and precision of movement. He claims that he has a different ideology and experience fighting monsters, but Dio is stronger. Then he experiences the loss while the other person acknowledges the problem. Against the backdrop of the Royal Academy dormitory, the narrative of the events of the previous evening resumes. Following this, at the meeting of the first-year students of Class A, the organizer Furin von Dragoon notes the presence of 18 out of 20 people. 2 are absent. Kate agreed with Faisama. He is indeed interesting. Meanwhile, Reina reflects on how to present her best self on the first day, noting that it is not easy. Stella admitted that she thought the fairy just had a new toy and agreed with that. And then she asks how far they have gone with Alan, and the 2 men discuss how much Faye knows about Alan's power. He has gray hair and light gray eyes and looks at 3 girls who are laughing and making sounds. At the same time, she asks if they really met at the magic training and where the duty officer is in each room, and someone is outraged by the dirt. She apologizes to Emma for her broken hopes and admits that she doesn't yet know how to eliminate his indifference. She also notices that he responds to teasing while the others are just having fun. Reina gathered everyone to discuss the recommendations. She asked what they thought, then, surprised, asked what they were talking about. Furthermore, she claims that the Dragoon family supports him and explains why there is no reason to expel him from the class. Alan stands dubiously as the other man insists that he is stubborn but not a cheat, and notes his education. In the end, he explained to Feirun that he would not interfere because of personal feelings, asking him to understand him correctly. Alan claims he joined the academy for equal opportunity, and does not believe it is necessary to expel a student with a high score unless he is proven to be dishonest. After which he stated that he would not vouch for him on behalf of the family until he was convinced of his skills. Reina agrees. The man in glasses asks if everyone agrees. When she declared that she would lay a better foundation, he was breathing heavily on the ground, and another man stood nearby with a staff. The old man announced that he had run out of mana and asked someone to lend him a hand, while 3 people on the ground watched him. He then challenged Alan to a duel. He looks at the other man with his hair tousled and his gaze full of determination.